Greetings, globe heads and flurfers. Tonight I want to talk about the moon. I've heard some really crazy claims from flat earthers about the moon. Just a few of the things I've heard. The moon is close and small. The moon's circling above our flat plane around the North Pole. The moon does not reflect the light of the sun. The moon is its own light source. The moon's not really even there. It's projected from somewhere else. All kinds of crazy things. So I want to talk about some of this. First of all, a lot of these claims indicate that flat earthers don't even know what light is or understand the nature of light. I'm sure you've all heard their claim about the moon's light is different from the sun's light. Well, yeah, it is, because the moon's light is reflected, whereas the sunlight is direct light from the sun. But the flat earth deniers, they claim that the moon's light is not reflected of the sun, and their claim is that it's a totally different kind of light, one that cools. That's right, folks. They say that if moonlight hits something, it cools it rather than warming it. When I hear this, I know that this particular flat earther making this claim knows absolutely nothing about photons, knows absolutely nothing about energy, knows absolutely nothing about light, and is just plain every day making stuff up because they know nothing about science. You see, energy is the movement of molecules and atoms. When atoms get excited, they move faster. And this faster moving movement of the atoms causes reactions in different things that we see as sometimes photons escaping in the form of light, heat, and other things. And when a photon hits something, it's going to excite it. It's going to make other energy particles or other particles move. So to claim that somehow photons can hit something and cause a slowing of these particles, which is what cooling would have to be, it's utter nonsense. It makes no sense whatsoever scientifically. Oh, but NASA fanboy, they're going out and they're testing this stuff. I mean, I've seen videos where they're, well, you've seen some videos. I've seen them too. But there's a lot of different factors at play there. You see, heat can move from one thing to another through a few different means. We have heat transfer by radiation, we have heat transfer by convection, we have heat transfer by conduction. The example of conduction would be when heat moves through an object like a metal spoon. You heat up one end of the spoon, heat will travel to the other end of the spoon. If you hold a spoon over flame, pretty soon the handle will burn you. That's conduction. Convection is like when warm fluid moves from one area to another, such as warm water, warm air. But radiation is when heat travels across space and time, often by along with light. Okay, so, and even if it's not light in the visible spectrum, you'll probably get, you'll definitely get infrared light and other things along with heat. So when you're measuring heat with these little laser thermometers that they use, and you're lasering to see what heat is given off by a certain object out there. All these factors at play will include stuff like is something exposed to the wind, where the air can carry some of its heat away by convection? Is something exposed to the open, where the heat can radiate away easier and is not bounced back off of some enclosed thing? If you go out on a dark night that's moonlit, and you measure the heat of the ground next to a building in the shade where the moon's not shining on it, and then you measure the temperature of the ground out in the open far from any building, you're gonna get colder surface away from the building. But that's not because the moon is somehow sucking the heat out of it. That's because the building is blocking the wind, and you're not getting convection, and it's blocking, it's limiting the amount of radiation to leave this surface next to it. The building itself probably has heat coming out. There's all kinds of other factors. But if you believe for some reason that any kind of light can hit something and make it colder, that's just nonsense. And you obviously don't understand photons. Okay? You can put that to bed right now, because it's not scientifically possible. That's flat earthers love to use the term pseudoscience. That is some premium grade A pseudoscience right there. But let's talk about the moon. It's hard for me to believe that anybody would think that it doesn't reflect the sun's light. Have you ever looked at the moon and looked at what part of it is lit in comparison to where the sun is? If you have a crescent moon, for example, and let's say it's low in the western sky in the early evening, that crescent, that part of the moon that's lit, is always going to be pointed toward the horizon. Why? Well, because the sun recently set below the horizon, and that lighted part of the moon always points toward the sun. Always. Because it's a reflection of the sun. If you ever... Don't take my word for it. Go out and test this stuff. If you ever go out in the middle of the night, right about midnight, or whatever, well, midnight's a bad way to put it, because midnight's based on the clock. True midnight, meaning the middle of, go out halfway between sundown and sunset. Whatever time that is where you are. Halfway between when the sun set and when it rises again. So literally the middle of the night. Go out at that time of night, and if you find the moon high in the sky at that time, it's going to be a full moon or pretty close to a full moon. Why? Because the only time that the moon is exactly on the opposite side of the earth from where the sun is during a full moon. The sun is behind the earth, shining over the earth's shoulder, so to speak, full on the moon, and we're looking at the lighted side of the moon. I heard a flat earther not very long ago say that he didn't believe that a solar eclipse was really the sun going in front of the moon, and his evidence against it was he didn't see any moon that day until the eclipse began. Well, duh. A solar eclipse can literally only happen during a new moon. If you don't know what a new moon is, that is the time of day, or the time of the lunar cycle, when the part of the moon that is not lit by the sun is pointing toward us. And we generally, if it's a true new moon, we generally don't see any moon. Not to mention, this moon is up in the daytime. Why is it up in the daytime? Because it's between us and the sun. That's the only way it can shine on the side facing away from us. That's the only way the sunshine can hit the other side, is if the moon is somewhere between us and the sun. Now, it has to be lined up perfectly to make an eclipse. So when you try to say, well, then there'd be an eclipse every month, you don't understand. It has to be a perfect alignment. I'm telling you, just go out, look at the moon, look at the sun, find them. Always the part that is lit up faces the moon. This would be a pretty crazy or faces the sun, and this would be a pretty crazy coincidence if the sun was, if the moon was a self-lighting object, wouldn't it? It's nonsense. Plus, if the moon was fully lit, why, if it was a self-illuminating thing, why would it even have phases? Why wouldn't it not just be fully lit all the time? The one thing that true science does is it takes scientific theory, is used to make predictions, and then when those predictions come through, it validates the theory. We are able to calculate with orbital mechanics and all that down to the very minute and the exact location, down to the square kilometer, where a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse is going to happen years from now. The flat earth has never made not even one single prediction like that. And that right there, folks, will tell you what is science and what is pseudoscience. The moon is an object in the sky that is lighted up by the sun, and we see the reflection of the sun, and all of the evidence proves that. So put away your pseudoscience baloney and just go out and look at the sun and the moon for yourself. Don't look directly at the sun without eye protection. Thanks for listening. Make sure to hit subscribe and hit the like button, or hit the don't like button. Either way helps me out. I'm about done with this just simply talking phase of my videos. I'm working on some projects that are going to allow me to show some various experiments and stuff. So keep a lookout for that. If you hit the bell button, then you'll get notified when a new video comes out. Enjoy YouTube. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there. Don't fall for the snake oil salesman. Good night.